For just a few frames, barely more than a flicker, there was someone standing behind me in the feed. A figure, blurry, out of focus. No clear features, but tall, upright, watching. I froze. The hallway lights dimmed slightly. I stood, grabbed my bag, and didn't bother shutting down the system. I walked briskly to the elevator, trying not to look behind me. I didn't wait for the elevator to chime. I just stepped in and kept my eyes on the floor numbers. When I reached the ground level, I walked out into the storm without even thinking to grab my umbrella. The next morning, I came back early. The copier room was dark. The machine was still unplugged. No print jobs in the queue. The coffee machine was empty. My workstation was off. I checked the security logs. No record of that feed. No saved video. No logged access. Building security insisted nothing had been moved. No one else had been on the floor. No maintenance. No after-hours cleaning. I asked about the camera angle. Showed them a still from my phone. They told me flatly, that camera doesn't exist. I don't work late anymore. No matter how far behind I am. No matter what the weather sips like. I shut down before 9 p.m. And I never sit with my back to the glass wall. I was the only one on the entire floor, until the copy room light turned on by itself. It was a stormy Tuesday night, one of those long stretches of rain that make the whole city feel half asleep. I was in the office, alone again, catching up on backlogged IT requests. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Most of the lights were off, except for the ones over my cubicle and the soft blue glow of my dual monitors. It wasn't unusual for me to stay late. I liked the quiet. No calls, no random walk-ups. Just me, my to-do list, and the low hum of servers. Our office, 27th floor, downtown Chicago, was modern, open concept. Clean, glass walls, polished concrete floors, barely any creaks or groans like you'd expect from older buildings. At night, it felt almost sterile. At 11:32 p.m., I noticed the light in the copy room switch on. It's just across from my workstation, separated by a transparent wall. One moment, the room was dark. The next, that harsh fluorescent glow kicked on like someone had walked in. I frowned. I hadn't seen anyone come through. I was certain the motion sensor in that room had been disabled a few weeks back during renovations. I'd been the one to submit the ticket about it. Maintenance had turned off all the automation because the sensors were malfunctioning, flickering lights, false triggers. I got up and walked over. The copy room was empty. Everything was still. Just the Xerox machine, the shelves with paper reams, and the stale smell of toner in the air. I flicked the light switch off manually and stood there for a second, listening. Nothing. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe someone reactivated the motion sensor without logging it. It's not like that never happens. Still, as I sat back down, I caught myself checking the hallway over my shoulder more than usual. Around midnight, I started hearing sounds again. At first it was faint, soft shuffling, like someone lightly handling paper, coming from the copy room. But I hadn't printed anything. No jobs were queued, and the machine was supposed to go into sleep mode after 15 minutes of inactivity. I stood again and walked to the room. The copier display was off. The screen was dark, but when I laid my hand on it, it was warm. Not warm like standby mode, warm like it had just finished a long job. The smell of toner was stronger now, more chemical, sharper in the back of my throat. I unplugged the machine. Maybe it was glitching. I'd have maintenance check it in the morning. I went back to my desk. A few minutes later, I heard it again, the mechanical whirring of the copier. I spun around. The room was lit again. The copier was moving, printing. I stared in disbelief. I knew I had unplugged it. This time, I walked over slowly. The copier was spitting out pages, one after another, all of them blank. I flipped one over. It felt normal, standard weight, no markings. but they smelled off, slightly burnt, like paper that had been passed too close to heat. I checked the plug, still unplugged. I stepped back and tried to tell myself this was a delayed job, some cached buffer being pushed through internal power. Printers can be weird like that. I stacked the blank pages neatly and left them on the tray. Back at my station, I tried to focus again, but the office felt changed. The air felt heavy, like pressure was building, even though there was no sound. At 12:03 a.m., I heard the coffee machine in the break area hiss to life. It poured a full cup. No one touched it. I stood and stared at it from across the room, unmoving. I didn't go near it this time. Then my monitor unlocked. I hadn't touched my keyboard or mouse. I'd stepped away, but the login screen blinked once, and then my desktop appeared. The cursor moved, barely, subtly, like someone was adjusting the mouse just slightly. Then a Slack notification popped up. The message came from a user named Marla_K. I recognized the name instantly. Marla had worked in accounting. She'd been let go during a round of layoffs in April. Her account had been deactivated. I remembered because I handled the deactivation. The message just read, "Still here." I stared at it. I opened the user profile. No picture, no contact info. The directory flagged the account as non-existent. I tried replying, but Slack gave me a failed message error. I hovered over the message window, not knowing what to do. My heart was pounding now. I decided to shut everything down. As I reached to power off my system, I noticed something on my second monitor, the security feed. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even logged into the camera software tonight, but it was running, in full screen, showing a feed of me sitting at my desk, from behind. Except, there sits no camera behind me. The building's cameras are mounted in the ceiling corners. I know because I've replaced them before, but this view, this angle, it was eye level, like someone was filming from a few feet away, standing right behind me. I paused the video, scrubbed back. At the 11:47 p.m. mark, something appeared. For just a few frames, barely more than a flicker, there was someone standing behind me in the feed. A figure, blurry, out of focus. No clear features, but tall, upright, watching. I froze. The hallway lights dimmed slightly. I stood, grabbed my bag, and didn't bother shutting down the system. I walked briskly to the elevator, trying not to look behind me. I didn't wait for the elevator to chime. I just stepped in and kept my eyes on the floor numbers. When I reached the ground level, I walked out into the storm without even thinking to grab my umbrella. The next morning, I came back early. The copier room was dark. The machine was still unplugged. No print jobs in the queue. The coffee machine was empty. My workstation was off. I checked the security logs. No record of that feed. No saved video. No logged access. Building security insisted nothing had been moved. No one else had been on the floor. No maintenance. No after-hours cleaning. I asked about the camera angle. Showed them a still from my phone. They told me flatly, that camera doesn't exist. I don't work late anymore. No matter how far behind I am. No matter what the weather sips like. I shut down before 9 p.m. And I never sit with my back to the glass wall. The office was locked from the inside. So how was someone standing outside the 7th floor window? It was late. Past 10:30. The kind of late where the hum of the building's old fluorescent lights feels louder than anything else. I was working on a presentation for a client pitch the next morning. One of those last-minute, we'll lose the account if we screw this up kind of things. I'd volunteered stupidly to take it home and polish it up. But home wasn't an option that night. My apartment had no heat, and the office, for all its faults, at least had a working microwave and Wi-Fi, so I stayed. Our building isn't much, 7 floors, older brick structure in a quieter part of downtown Portland. Half the floors are barely occupied. Ours, the sixth, was a patchwork of marketing cubicles, a few lonely offices, and an outdated break room with a giant window overlooking the alley out back. I was alone, not unusual. Most of the team bails by 6. I kind of like it that way. Quiet, no distractions. But around 10:45, I got hungry. Walked to the break room with a frozen meal in hand, already tasting how bland it would be. I popped the container into the microwave and leaned against the counter. That's when I saw him. A man, standing down in the alley, directly across from the window. He wasn't moving, not shifting weight or pacing, just standing and staring up at me. He was too far away to make out clearly, and the glass reflected just enough of the room to make it feel like I might be imagining things. But I wasn't. He was real. He wore a dark jacket, hood up, hands by his sides. At first, I didn't think much of it. Portland has its share of late-night wanderers. Maybe he was just some guy taking a break behind a bar or waiting for a ride. I glanced away, waited for the microwave to beep, and tried to forget about it. But when I went back 15 minutes later for coffee, he was still there. Same spot, same posture, staring at me. That was when the unease really set in. I watched him for a minute. He didn't budge. Not even a twitch. I actually waved once, just to, I don't know, prove to myself he was a person. No response. Back at my desk, I tried to push it out of my mind. Told myself he was probably high, or sleeping with his eyes open, or something else bizarre but harmless. Still, I found myself glancing over at the break room, more and more, like some part of me didn't want to look, but couldn't help it. Eventually, around midnight, I had to pee. On the way to the bathroom, I peeked toward the break room again. Empty. The man was gone. Relief washed over me. Maybe he'd left. Maybe he'd just been weird, not dangerous. I let myself believe it for exactly 3 minutes. Because as I sat back down, I heard it, a dull thump. It wasn't loud, just soft, sudden, muffled through glass. From the break room, I stood. My heart started tapping faster in my chest. I didn't run, just walked slowly toward the sound. The hallway felt colder somehow, and the lights buzzed louder than usual. When I stepped into the break room, it looked the same. Except now, on the inside of the window, 7 floors up, were 2 faint palm prints. Smudged, pressed wide, as if someone had leaned in. Hard. My skin prickled. My legs wanted to bolt, but my brain refused to fully register what I was seeing. That window doesn't open. It doesn't face a platform or fire escape. There's nothing outside it but empty air. I stepped closer. The prints were real, not foggy residue. Real, oily smears. Human. I backed away and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking as I called the building's security line. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. That fits when the microwave beeped. The same one Ted used over an hour ago. It was running again. Set to 0 o'clock. No countdown. No time. Just running. I didn't touch it. I hadn't touched it. I ran back to my desk, locked my computer, and grabbed my bag. As I fumbled with my badge at the elevator, I glanced down the hall and saw the break room light flicker off. Then on again. Then off. Security answered on the 3rd try. I barely explained before they said they'd send someone up. I told them I'd wait in the lobby. I needed to get out of there. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, the night guard, Keith I think his name is, was already waiting. I told him what happened. Every detail. I didn't even care how paranoid I sounded. To his credit, he didn't laugh. Just nodded, took a flashlight, and said he'd check it out. I waited in the lobby, heart pounding. eyes glued to the security monitors behind the front desk. 10 minutes later, Keith returned. "No one up there," he said. "Break room sips empty. No prints on the glass. Maybe you saw your own reflection?" I know what I saw. Still, I nodded. Didn't argue. Just wanted to leave. Before I left the building, I asked Keith if the emergency stairwell had camera access. He hesitated. "Why?" he asked. I told him I had a feeling. Just a gut thing. He checked the log. My badge had been used 3 times that night, twice at the elevator, and once at 11:58 p.m. to access the emergency stairwell on the 6th floor. I hadn't touched the stairwell. I went home, didn't sleep, and barely made it through the client pitch the next day. Every sound, every shadow had me twitching. I asked HR that afternoon to move my desk. No explanation, just said I wasn't comfortable where I was. A week later, I was in the elevator with one of the janitors, older guy, always polite. We made small talk, and somehow I mentioned the break room. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You sit by the break room. Don datst you." "Used to," I replied. "Not anymore." He nodded slowly. "Years ago there was a guy, graphic designer or something. He stayed late a lot. People said he wasn't doing well. One night, he jumped from the break room window. I stared at him. That window doesn't set open." He just shrugged. "Doesn't mean he didn't go through it." I didn't ask anything else. I still work in the building. Different desk. Different schedule. I don't stay past 6. I bring lunch now, never heat it up, and I avoid the break room altogether. But sometimes, when I pass it, I glance at the window, just in case. My office phone rang after midnight, from an extension that doesn't exist anymore. I work as an accountant for a mid-sized insurance firm, just outside Phoenix. Quiet building, beige cubicles, that humming fluorescence that never quite lets the room feel fully lit. It's one of those offices where time seems to slow after 6 p.m., just you and the machines, clicking and humming like they're breathing. That Friday, I stayed late. End-of-month deadlines. Reports overdue. I didn't mind. No one around meant no distractions, and I needed the hours. I had my earbuds in, half listening to an old podcast, when my desk phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Extension 441. That caught my attention. 441 used to be Nancy's line. She was a senior auditor, sat 2 rows over, always quiet, always working late herself. 6 months ago, she quit suddenly. No goodbye, no farewell email, just gone. I remember someone saying she packed her stuff during lunch and left. Her desk had sat empty for weeks before someone finally boxed it up. I pulled the earbuds out and answered. "Accounting, Kyle speaking." There was nothing on the line, just static. Not silence, static, like an old radio caught between stations. I waited, maybe a few seconds. Then the call dropped. I stared at the phone. Was someone messing around? I hit *69 and redialed the extension. The system voice replied, "The extension you have dialed is no longer in service." I checked the time, 12:15 a.m. I told myself it was probably a system glitch. Maybe someone recycled her line and hadn't updated the directory yet. Or maybe it was a misdial from another department. I went back to work. Monday morning, I brought it up to my supervisor, half joking. "Hey, do we still use 441? She looked confused. "No. That line was decommissioned after Nancy left." "Right. But it rang me Friday night." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's not possible. It wipes all deactivated lines from the system." Could that's been a spoofed number? I let it drop, even though something about it stuck with me. That night I stayed late again. I made a point to leave the overhead lights on this time. Maybe it was silly, but the shadows in that place get thick when you're alone. At exactly 12:16 a.m., the phone rang. Same extension, 441. I stared at it, let it ring twice before answering. Accounting. Static again. Only this time, it didn't drop. It stayed on the line. A constant, low, whispery static, like something just outside the range of recognition. I slowly placed the receiver back and stood. That's when I heard the printer. It was down the hall, a network printer, used mostly for shared audit documents. It was printing something. I walked over, expecting a cue job from someone who'd accidentally hit the wrong device. But no. The printer was churning out pages, dozens of them. The top sheet had "Do Not File" stamped in red across the top. I recognized the format, an internal audit report, 3 years old at least. I picked it up. Nancy Sepp's name was listed on the bottom. I began flipping through the pages. The details didn't make sense. Accounting errors, flagged transactions, highlighted inconsistencies in outgoing payments. The report seemed damning. It looked like she'd found something. And then the printer kept going. Page after page. I unplugged the machine. It stopped immediately. Back at my desk, I tried to log this incident for IT to review, but my computer had restarted itself. No warning, just the startup chime. When the desktop finally reloaded, something new appeared. A folder, titled 441. I didn't make it. I don't think anyone could have not that fast. I hovered for a second before clicking. Inside was a single file, a JPG image. I opened it. It was an old company group photo. I remembered it. It was from the summer barbecue 2 years ago. The whole department, awkward and sunburned, forced into one smiling mass by HR. Everyone in the photo looked normal, clear, in focus. Except Nancy. She was standing near the edge of the group, face slightly blurred, not like a bad photo, like she had been moving during the exposure. But I remember that day. She wasn't moving. I stared at the image longer than I should have. The lights above my desk flickered. One blink, then another, then they steadied. I closed the image and deleted the folder, or tried to. The system froze, wouldn't let me remove it. I gave up and shut down my machine. Back home, I tried to sleep. Couldn't. I kept thinking about the static, the printout, the photo. The next day, I logged into the internal HR system. We weren't supposed to access employee termination files, but I had ways. I looked for Nancy's record. It was instead there. No resignation letter, no exit interview, just a name and employee ID. Every file linked to her account, redirected to a 404 error. I did find something, though. An old email thread between her and upper management. 6 messages in total. Her first message was flagged "You are gent." She wrote about reporting inconsistencies she couldn't set explain. Numbers that didn't set match up. Audit trails missing links. Her final message ended with, "If no one wants to see what I sit I'm seeing, I sit you'll take it higher. This one sit just disappear." After that, nothing. The thread stopped cold. As I scrolled, my desk phone rang again. This time, it was my own extension. I froze. I stared at the screen. It flashed, "Help me." Then the light shut off. Not just at my desk, the entire floor. The hum vanished. The servers went quiet. The monitors died. The silence was deafening. I stood in the dark for what felt like a full minute, waiting for the emergency lights to kick in. They didn't set. I didn't wait any longer. I grabbed my bag and left. The stairwell was dark, but I kept going. 7 flights down, out the side door, into the lot. When I reached my car, I turned and looked up at the building. Only one window had a light on. 6th floor, right above my desk. I didn't go back that weekend. I didn't sleep much, either. Monday morning, I met with HR and asked about Nancy again. I said I was updating records. I lied. The woman across from me sighed. Nancy never officially quit, she said. She stopped showing up. After 2 days we called, got no answer. Eventually went to her place. And I asked. She was gone. Apartment full. Nothing missing. Not even her toothbrush. No sign of her. I didn't dare ask anything else. That afternoon, a new intern was assigned to our floor. She was given Nancy Sepp's old desk. Extension 441. I walked past her later that day. She was settling in, placing a framed photo on the corner of her desk. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. And I never ever worked past 9 p.m. again.